So, now these serpent masters suddenly find out that this is the third time that their plans have gone awry. First, they're kicked out of their own planet, right? They have to travel across space, come to this useless planet they probably don't even like. They create a race of servants to serve them who won't serve them. They create a third. I think the fundamental problem was we've been crossing our DNA with the humanoids on this planet, right? But there's lots of other creatures on this planet, other fauna. So they start making researches into the other fauna on this planet, screening and checking into their DNA and their blood and all of the rest of it. And to cut a long story short, and they did this without, if you read J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, with educated eyes, you're going to read something amazing in there. They did this with a lot of different animals for different purposes. That's where we get our unicorn, our minotaur, you know, all the centaur creatures coming out of. That's what they were doing. And they were alive right down to even the Middle Ages. But they found that what we call the Earth reptile had specifically good DNA for them to cross with. And they did. And they created what we know to be the reptilians. So again, ladies and gentlemen, when you're hearing about the reptilians visited our planet, the reptilians are coming, disinformation or just lack of research. We were not invaded by any reptilians. The reptilians are created on the planet Earth by the visitors. They are not the visitors. They are a group that was created by them later on. And you know the reptile is cold-blooded, right? Have you ever noticed that you can steal the children of a reptile mother right in front of her and she just stares right into space? You've heard the term cold-blooded, right? So when they crossed this, then they had the perfect servant. A being that was very powerful, very strong, and no conscience whatsoever. And these reptilians were their servants for a long, long time. Now, some of them did look very reptilian, by the way. This does happen, that when they created this fourth race, some of them would look very, very reptilian in their eyes and their hands. But again, because they were using humanoid DNA, aliens look humanoid, a lot of them look very, very humanoid. In fact, you could be standing beside one today and not know it. The ones who look more reptilian, right, they're gone. They're underground now. Well, in fact, they were phased out. Around about the Middle Ages, they were still around. That's where you get all the stuff about the knights and the heroes going to have to fight with some demon knocking on the door and having to fight a dragon or something like that. Yeah, because these characters are still around. Mythologies are full of it. But as the industrial age came up, you can't have these characters walking the streets. So they phased them out. But the ones that look, and they're still born, some of them, but the humanoid ones, you could be standing right beside them and wouldn't know it unless your intuition tells you there's ways, as psychics and people like that will tell you. And as it says in Clement, and on earth shall be monsters, a generation of dragons of men, and likewise of serpents. From another famous writer. Now let's conclude by looking at the post-Diluvian epoch, see if we can get through a little bit of this. Obviously, we're not 11,000 years ago anymore, are we? We're talking about this in the 21st century. So, if there indeed was a war of the gods, if I'm telling you truth, if the evil came into humankind due to this genetic manipulation, and like I got more to say about that, it's just, you know, we have such a short period of time about all the euphemisms in the Bible and what have you. But if in fact this did happen, why is it that neither side seems to have then triumphed? It's over, 50,000 years later since they arrived here, and certainly 12,000 years ago since they got into the War of the Gods. I just wanted to sketch the background and show you how many texts actually talk about the War of the Gods, because if I was just telling you it, you wouldn't get it. It's there. It's in the records. But why are we 11,000 years later still talking about this? If evil had triumphed, right, the serpent masters of God, we'd all have no problem. We'd all be slaves, working in mines, and no worries, right? Completely over and done with. Evil would be all over the world. And if the good side had won, well, then we'd all be living in peace and harmony, wouldn't we? In a paradisical civilization. Neither which are true. We have the schizophrenia I was talking about earlier. Each one of us have it inside. And it's collective and it's political and it's found in every corner of the globe. Well, this is because of an unforeseen variable. And that is what it is. When this thermonuclear war that probably involved even weapons we don't know about, and a lot of psychic stuff, when you read the Celtic legends, they're talking about a lot of stuff coming even out of the mind in magical wars. But with an emphasis on technology, on hardware, don't doubt that. An unforeseen variable occurred. The violence of these people awoken the violence of the earth. Remember the first deluge I told you was an atrocity? It's mentioned in all the records about the animals and people died. But it did subside after a while. It changed the earth. But it subsided after a few hundred years. This violence They say that the radiation from the weapons incinerated the entire atmosphere. All the moisture in the atmosphere was totally irradiated. And this affected the magnetic, right, aura of the Earth and the Roche limit. And the Earth careered off of its axis and went into what we call the pole shift situation. And then when it shifted its pole, Mars was affected, right? And all the other planets spun out of control, which they still look like they have an influence from this. But what happened even more importantly? The Roche field sent out its magnetic powers, right, its magnetic energy, and the Van Allen belt, the asteroid belt that we talked about earlier on, now it sucked back all that debris from the lost planet of Tiamat, and all the ice and all the water and all of that planet's debris, trillions of tons of this stuff. I've got in my book there and on this website endless quotes from legends, exactly specifically talking about this. We just don't have time to show them all, but it's all in the manuscript. This stuff poured into the Earth, and that's why they talk about the 40 days of rain, how the Earth stood still in the sky and man couldn't see even his brother's face and all of that. But this deluge of water fell in now with a vengeance, and it was so powerful that it created unbelievable devastation. The pole shift we're talking about here. Studies have shown that at 10,000 years BC, the celestial pole was inclined at the angle of 30 degrees from its present position. This is, in turn, strongly suggests that the terrestrial axis then orientated differently from today. The gigantic worldwide tectonic disturbances of the late Pleistocene times occurred almost simultaneously on a near unimaginable scale, I should say, precisely what could be expected from a powerful external influence, but not from the Ice Age conditions conventionally believed. This is from a book you all should get called When the Earth Nearly Died. I have it abstracted in my dossier, so don't worry about it. Then the Tahoe, not far from here, the Tahoe Indians are saying, there was a time when their tribe possessed the whole earth and were strong and numerous and rich. But a day came when a people rose up stronger than they and defeated and enslaved them. Afterward, the Great Spirit sent an immense wave across the continent from the sea, and this wave engulfed both the oppressors, look at that last line, both the oppressors and the oppressed, leaving only a very small remnant, very suggestive that. Plato says, in one day and one fatal night, there came the mighty earthquakes and inundations that engulfed that warlike people. Look at this references. That debris that fell in from Tiamat, plus the earth change, the earth pole shift, that is what sank those 5 or 4 continents I've been telling you about. Our planet had hardly any water on it at all. It only had what was called the Miocene Ocean, which is where the Baltic is now. You know where the Dead Sea and Caspian Sea, most of Russia, was an ocean, granted. And there's probably some other water here and there. All these scholars are still wondering how the Indians got over to there and how the Egyptians got over to South America. There was no bloody water, so all you had to do was walk. Right? But I'll tell you, when those continents, Appalachia, Tyrrhenia, Oceania, Thuringia, Fennoscandia, when that debris fell in, that is what put these continents thousands and thousands of fathoms under the oceans that we have today. You know the fear of water that some people have, the fear of ocean? For a reason. Those ain't even our waters. When you look at the ocean, you're looking at Tiamat. What was left of it. John, the Bible. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. See? The reference is to no more water, or water. And the fact that the earth was born again as the ocean subsided from the next continent, implying that seawater covered everything at one time. And yeah, our human fears and phobias. Fear of darkness, caves and hollow places, of water, of heights, of loneliness, of insects and certain animals, enclosed spaces, foreigners. You know, the psychologist is going to say, well, that's just the way the mind is. We have psychological fears. Hey, what would happen if those are physiological, racial memories? See, again, I don't believe that nature and the human mind is that, is that messed up, right? So that, slip into my Irish a bit, that does this to us. We're not plagued by just, psychological Freudian problems for no reason. There's research now that proves that this is physiological. Well, look, if it only happened 50,000 years ago, that's a dot in time. In the phylogenetic timeline, that is extremely short period of time.